Okay, so once again, good evening. This is Psych 337. We're about to go through social or observational learning, and then we look at relative or related questions to that effect. Okay, so let's see what we'll be learning under this, the outline. We'll be able to, at the end, we should be able to demonstrate the understanding of Bandura's observational or social learning theory. We should be able to demonstrate the understanding of this theory known as the observational learning theory. Also, we should be able to explain the process of observational learning. What are the process, or what is the process? What are the process, or what is the process of the learning? Just like we did the process of classical conditioning and also operant conditioning or instrumental learning. Also, to discuss, if we should be able to discuss the factors that influence observational learning, as we are about to see. What are some of the factors that can either strengthen or weaken observational learning? So again, that's what we are about to do, and we'll go a bit faster. Okay, we'll go a bit faster, because this is just a revision for us to be able to solve the questions. Okay, so someone has not muted his mic, and I can hear some feedbacks. Please kindly mute your mic if you haven't. Okay. Okay, so learning by observation differs from classical and operant conditioning because this type of learning does not require direct personal experiment with stimuli, reinforcers, or punishers. As we realized in the previous discussions under classical conditioning and operant conditioning, we realized that there's a presentation of a stimuli, right? And then it is reinforced. Behaviors are reinforced, okay, by certain stimuli. And when we come to operant conditioning, we have punishers. We have reinforcement and punishment. If you go to classical conditioning, we have stimuli, okay, associating two stimuli to elicit a conditioned response, such as associating the neutral stimulus with the unconditioned stimulus, which the neutral stimulus later becomes the conditioned stimulus, and you keep associating that with the unconditioned stimulus to elicit a conditioned response. Yes, we saw this under classical conditioning. With operant conditioning, we also observed and learned reinforcers. Yes, the mic that is on, please kindly off that mic, okay? Thank you. Okay, so we looked at reinforcers and then punishers, okay? Even the reinforcers, we looked at the positive and the negative reinforcers. Punishers too, we looked at the positive and negative. This direct personal experiences were all under classical and operant. But with observational learning, it's said to have occurred when an observer's behavior changes after viewing the behavior of a model. Please, once again, it shouldn't be a temporal change, because temporal change will not be called learning. This is observational learning. This is observational learning, and therefore a temporal change, for example, if I'm driving and I am to see a police officer and I change my behavior due to that, and it is not permanent or relatively permanent, then we can't call that learning, as we have learned from the beginning that learning is defined as what? As change in behavior, a relatively permanent change in behavior due to experience, a relatively permanent change in behavior due to experience, okay? And there's a question to that effect where you explain the element in the definition, okay, the key point in the definition. We'll look at that as well. So we are saying that observational learning is said to have occurred. So here, you have to merge observation and learning.
Jemfua, please kindly mute yourself. Jemfua.
Please kindly mute your mics, okay? Let's not make this difficult. You know your attention is not here. Kindly do the needful and then maybe exit later. I don't know, but maybe later I'll upload it on my this time, my YouTube channel. So if you think you don't have the time now, kindly just not disturb the rest who have the time, okay? Thank you very much. Okay. So we are saying that always merge the two, observational learning, meaning there is an observation and it causes change in behavior. It causes a change in behavior. And we said this change must be relatively permanent, okay? And it should be due to conscious experience. That's observation, conscious experience. After viewing the behavior of a model, after viewing the behavior of a model. Now, who is a model? A model is someone you admire, okay? Someone you admire, okay? That's the person you hold in certain esteem, someone you value, okay? What happens to the person makes you learn or unlearn, okay? Now we say learning by observation involves simply watching the behavior of another person called a model, okay? So when you are to observe someone, and we call a model, that's the one you are watching, the one. So the actors on our screens, they become like models, okay? The newscasters on our screens, those we listen to, they are all like the musicians we see, they're all like models, the politicians, the teachers, anyone we observe, because if the person is that irrelevant, then you won't even pay attention to the person in the first place. Yesterday in the class, we discussed what attention also is. Let's move on. This theory and this studies is accredited to Albert Bandura. We all remember these studies way back from level 100, I think, second semester Psych 102, and also Psych 221, and also Psych 337 today. We will see that again. Albert Bandura was the one who conducted a research by setting up a Bobo Doll. Okay, he inflated a doll and then made kids watch a violent kind of show, a violent kind of movie. Now after that, he released the kids to the Bobo Doll for them to play with it, and they were exhibiting or mimicking what was happening. If it is punches, they were, like we say, action movie. Yeah, they were also mimicking the same thing. They were trying to do the same thing after observing the models in the movie. Okay, so this is credited to Albert Bandura. Let's move from here. We have some questions. There's a past question on this we'll be answering today. That's why I intended that we do this first. Okay. So before Bandura reached his decision, he conducted a series of classic experiments. One of these is described below. Now, classic experiment, meaning it is not contemporary experiment. That is like years back, like old kind of like experiment, meaning it's not today. Yeah. So he conducted a studies, and it has been described below, and I've narrated it already, right? That's the Bobo Doll studies. The Bobo Doll is an inflated or inflatable egg-shaped balloon creature with a weight in the bottom. Anyway, this will not come in the exams. We just have to know, that's all. And I've narrated it already, okay? With a weight in the bottom, that makes it bob back up when you knock it down. So because of the weight beneath it, if you have to knock it down, it just bounces back. Yeah. You know, I can't read all this because I've told you, you know the story already. Okay, so the results. Subjects exposed to aggressive models reproduced a good deal of aggression resembling that of the models, and that their mean scores differed markedly from those of subjects in the non-aggressive and control groups. Now, there were some people who were not exposed. Some of the kids were not exposed to any kind of model, any kind of aggressive model, right? They will be the control group, because we are going to compare those who were in the, let's say, the auditorium, those who were there watching the movie. After the movie, they released both of them to the Bobo Doll, okay, to observe how they will behave. And one group, which is the experimental group, they exhibited or reproduced a good deal of aggression. And this aggression resembled that of the models. And their scores, the mean score, when you say mean scores, we've learned this under psychostat. If you've forgotten, then holiday. Okay, so their mean score, that's the average score. The average one, meaning the average one, meaning majority of them, their score differed significantly from those that from the control group. So this was the studies, and this came in the IE. So in case you did your IE yourself, you saw this question. Okay, so subjects in the aggressive condition also exhibited significantly more partially imitative and non-imitative aggressive behavior, and were generally less inhibited in their behavior than subjects in the non-aggressive condition. So subjects in the aggressive condition, that those who were in the experimental group, they exhibited significantly more partially imitative and non-imitative aggressive behavior, okay, compared to those who inhibited, because they weren't part of the aggressive group. So it means that some of the kids were very much aggressive and very, like, they exhibited a great deal of aggression that resembled that of the models. And there were some of them, part of the experimental group, they didn't meet that standard of resembling that of the model, but they also did partially. Okay, if you have to compare them to those in the control group, right? So these were the criticisms, and please, this is where even the question is centered. So let's pay attention. This were the criticisms. So number one.
So this will
Muhammad Mutala, my old man, my main man, your mic is on. Thank you. Okay, so critics have argued that the experiment, so please, these are the points, okay? Critics have argued that the experiment conducted was unethical and morally wrong because the children were trained to be aggressive. So that's number one. So what are the critics saying? You know, in science, you, the experimenter, the scientist, okay, the initiator, you need to have an open mind. So there's open-mindedness in science, meaning you need to be able to have the mind to accept criticisms. And here we are talking about academic criticisms, not non-fact criticisms. You understand? And that's ad hominem. How does it concern studies or academic? Anyways, so that is one of the criticisms, that it was unethical. Okay, why is it unethical? Because the children were trained to be aggressive. Now, if you are using humans, if you have learned this under the ethics, if you are using humans, you should be careful that you not expose them to any kind of danger. Okay, now exposing children to danger will be unethical. So that's one. Number one is that it is unethical. Why? Because children were exposed to aggressiveness, right? Or trained to be aggressive. Number two, It is also believed, and please, I hope you are jotting this down, because we're going to answer a question to that, and I am expecting that you all contribute. Okay, so it is also believed that the experiments might have had long-term implications on the children. Yes, indeed, that's so true, because when one learns, what is learning in the first place? You are making the children learn something. What is learning? A relatively permanent change in behavior due to experience. And what is the meaning of relatively permanent? Meaning it has a long-term duration. A long-term duration, but this duration differs from one person to the other. That's the meaning of relative. Relative means each duration, it is very long-term, but each duration is long-term relative. Each duration is long-term relative, meaning maybe for me, it can stick with me for like 15 years or 10 years, someone maybe 20 years, someone maybe 30 years, someone maybe for the rest of the person's life. So it is relative. Okay, so that is one of the beliefs. That is why it is a belief. Why didn't they say that it will stick with the children, right? Or it will have a long-term implications? Yes, it will have a long-term implications, but it is relative. Someone's mic is on. Okay, so that's why it is believed that the experiment might have had, so these people speaking, they came to view the studies or review the studies after the studies have been done. Okay, after the studies has been done long ago. So they were reviewing it and they were like, okay, so it might have had a long-term implication or implications on the children. And I hope we understand that. It means the children will, for a long time, maybe they exhibited this kind of aggressiveness that has become part of them. Relatively, it might have become part of them. That's the second question. Okay, and if you have to write a long essay, someone's mic is on. I think patient Chroma, something like that, if you are the one. Okay, if you have to write an essay, it means when you state it, you need to be explaining what you mean by this English. If you have to say that the experiment conducted was unethical and morally wrong, then you explain it. Why? Because the children were trained to be aggressive. What do you mean by the children were trained to be aggressive? Because they were exposed to aggressive models, and that learning, this is the meaning of learning, okay? And exposing kids, exposing people to aggressiveness is relative to exposing them to danger, which under the ethics of research, it's unethical, right? Now, thirdly, many critics have argued that the children were manipulated to respond to the aggressive movie, meaning they were pushed in a way to pay attention and then give such response. They were manipulated to do that. That is what some critics argued, or they believe, that the children were forced to exhibit such behavior. So that's another point. The fourth point is, it says, moreover, the children were teased and became frustrated because they could not touch the toys. Okay, the toys was not entirely exposed to them. The toys was not entirely exposed to them. Okay, and therefore, if they are not getting access to like play with the toys, and they are just doing it and they leave it there, they're just playing with it in the lab and they will leave it there. They have been teased. Like in Chi, you say, "Wow, ogbamena inga." For example, it's like you have been made to learn the sweetness of egg, and that